My name is Mark, and I'm married and have 2 kids. I work full time actually, I take on extra hours to support our family since my wife stays at home to take care of the children. Over time, I started noticing that despite my efforts, money was always tight. At first, I figured it was just normal expenses piling up, but then my wife's behavior changed. She began avoiding conversations about money and started hiding her phone from me. One day, I accidentally saw some messages about purchases I hadn't been told about then. I noticed new items on the kitchen table, expensive cosmetics and branded clothes she had bought for herself. It hit me that she was spending the family's money on her own wants, even though she doesn't bring in any income. I decided to check the credit card statements and saw charges far beyond what I expected. That's when I realized she wasn't saving or budgeting like we agreed, and it crushed me, because I was working so hard for our future and our kids' security. After seeing those credit card statements, I couldn't keep it to myself. I sat her down one evening and calmly asked why she was spending so much without telling me. At first, she got defensive and said she needed some things to feel good about herself, especially since she stays home all day and doesn't have an income of her own. She argued that I didn't understand the pressure she was under and that she wasn't just wasting money. She said it was for her mental health. I told her that we agreed to save for our kids and that her spending was putting our family at risk. The conversation quickly escalated into shouting. She accused me of being controlling and said I was ignoring how hard she worked at home. Despite her justifications, I couldn't ignore the fact that our family's financial stability was suffering. The tension between us only grew after that, and things started to fall apart. After that confrontation, I felt a mix of anger, disappointment, and sadness. It was hard to believe that the person I trusted with our family's future was acting like this. I kept replaying our conversations in my head, wondering if I was too harsh or if I really had every right to be upset. Nights were the worst. I would lie awake worrying about how this would affect our kids and whether our marriage could survive. At times, I even felt guilty, thinking maybe I wasn't supportive enough or that I failed to understand what she was going through. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that her choices were selfish and reckless. Despite all that, I still loved her and hoped we could fix things. But the trust was broken, and every day it felt like we were drifting further apart. After weeks of tension and failed attempts to fix things, I realized that we weren't going to resolve this on our own. I started talking to a lawyer to understand my options, especially since I wanted to protect our children's future. Eventually, I made the difficult decision to file for divorce and seek custody of our 2 kids. It wasn't easy, but I couldn't keep living in a relationship where financial trust didn't exist and where our future was at risk. I hoped this step would give both of us space to reflect and maybe find some peace. I told my wife about the divorce decision, and unsurprisingly, she was devastated and angry. Our communication broke down completely after that. Not long after the divorce announcement, my wife's brother started getting involved. He began sending me angry messages, blaming me for destroying their family. One night, I found that someone had tried to vandalize my car, scratches all over the paint and a smashed side mirror. I suspected it was her brother's doing. Instead of escalating things, I reported the damage to the police and told my lawyer about it. I wanted to handle it calmly and legally, without stooping to revenge tactics. The brother eventually backed off after a warning, but the whole situation made the divorce even more stressful. The vandalism incident shook me more than I expected. It wasn't just about the damage to my car, but the realization that this conflict had started to involve other people and could spiral further. I felt a mix of frustration and sadness, knowing that what started as a personal issue was now affecting everyone around us. At the same time, I tried to stay focused on the bigger picture, protecting my kids and moving forward without bitterness. I avoided responding to provocations and kept communication about the divorce strictly through lawyers. Despite everything, I still struggled with feelings of loneliness and worry about how this would impact my children. It was a tough time, but I reminded myself that staying calm was the best way to protect my family. After the dust settled a bit, I focused on rebuilding stability for myself and my kids. I arranged my schedule so I could be there for them as much as possible, trying to keep routines consistent despite the changes. I also started seeing a therapist to help me process everything: the betrayal, the stress, and the sadness. It wasn't easy to admit I needed help, but it made a big difference in how I handled the situation emotionally. Friends and family were mostly supportive, though some were divided on who was right. That added another layer of complexity, but I learned to take their opinions with a grain of salt and focus on what was best for my kids. Looking back, I understand why some people might say I was too harsh or controlling. My wife felt isolated and unappreciated, and maybe I didn't communicate as well as I should have about our financial struggles and expectations. Still, I can't ignore that spending our entire family budget on personal wants without contributing income was irresponsible and unfair, especially with 2 kids depending on us. This experience taught me how important it is to have clear, honest conversations early on and to share responsibilities and expectations openly. I also realized that love alone isn't always enough when fundamental values clash. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone going through something like this, it would be, don't ignore warning signs. Financial dishonesty or major disagreements about money can quietly erode a relationship. Talk openly about expectations early and often. Make sure you both understand the priorities, especially when kids are involved. And don't be afraid to seek outside help, whether that's counseling, financial planning, or legal advice, before things get out of hand. Also, try to handle conflicts calmly. Revenge or retaliation rarely helps and usually makes things worse. Protect your mental health and focus on what's best for your family. This whole experience was one of the hardest things I've ever been through. Losing the marriage I thought would last forever was painful, but it also taught me a lot about trust, communication, and boundaries. I learned that love isn't just about feelings, it's about respect, honesty, and shared responsibility. And sometimes, protecting your family means making tough decisions, even if they hurt. I still care about my kids and want the best for them, and I hope that by sharing my story, others can avoid some of the mistakes we made.